Good morning, back at it, Sunday in the garage. Got a few hours this morning, gonna knock some stuff out. First of which is gonna be installing the fuel system. So I have the injectors all ready, I lubed them up, I lubed up the new O-rings with some Silglide. If you don't have something like this or some POORcha O-ring lube, highly recommend it. Makes anything with O-rings so much easier. We'll get the fuel rail on, get the fuel system buttoned up. That is going to include replacing these rubber lines, is your fuel supply and return. The big problem with these is they cross right over the exhaust manifold right there, and they come right over to the fuel rail. So when these get old and brittle, they're prone to crack, and obviously fuel and heat leads to barbecues. So we're going to resolve all that. And then once the fuel system's buttoned up, it's onto the timing belt. So gonna get after it. Fuel rails are installed, working on the fuel lines now. Had to remove the inner fender liner, which gives you access to the fuel lines where they come up from the chassis. Got the return and the supply. I staggered them slightly so the fittings aren't all mashed together. I'm happy with the fitment and where everything's placed, so I'm going to go ahead and snug these down, which will crimp them onto the fuel lines. Also added a little, an old section of the fuel line, just split it open and put it over this brake line, just because it seems like these lines are rubbing a little bit. Just don't want anything to chafe. So I'm going to see if I can get these two separated a little bit, so that when I put these brackets back on, between the brackets and this rubber, hopefully there's no metal on metal rubbing on anything. But happy with that. The only thing I am going to have to do is I rotated the fuel pressure regulator 180 degrees. The reason being is because I want these lines, instead of how they normally run, kind of this one comes this way, this one comes this way, and then they go down into the hole there. There's enough line here where if you rotate the regulator, and this one I even need to shorten a little bit, but this is the easy one to shorten because it's just a hose clamp with a fancy cover on it, so you can cut it anywhere you want to. But the reason being is that it just doesn't have your fuel lines running right over your exhaust manifold. It kind of routes them back a little bit, which not only I think looks cleaner, but is just safer. So I'm going to go ahead and snug up my compression fittings and then get the rest of the stuff tightened down, and that should be it for the fuel system. Little tip for cutting this stuff. I don't know, I guess I can't really call it a pro tip, but it's a hack tip. We'll go with a hack tip. So this is the return side. It doesn't have a crimped on fitting like the supply side does. It just slips over a hose barb and has a clamp. But it's a little too long. I'm going to shorten it up. And I can't find my pneumatic die grinder here. I know I have an electric one back at the house, but I don't feel like running back there to get it. But these cut pretty easy with a die grinder. Or in this case, what I'm doing is I'm just going to use a hacksaw. It's what I got. So if you wrap it in electrical tape first, it keeps this woven sheath intact. And then if you clamp it as well, it just keeps it nice and steady while you're cutting it. You'll have a little bit of cleanup to do at the end. There'll be a couple of things frayed out, more than likely, that I'll kind of show you at the end. You clean those up pretty easily with a pair of side cutters, and you're in good shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this cut, and we'll see how it looks afterwards. So there you go. That was just with a hacksaw. So you can see there's a couple, focus. You can see there's a couple stray wires sticking out. I'll get those trimmed back, and this will be just fine. So there you go. There's your hack tip. Project Porsche hack tip. Okay, fuel lines are done. I'm happy with the routing. Shorten that guy up. I run down and down into the fender well. So down here, I'm gonna hold off on putting the fender well back in until I start it, just so I can make sure that I don't have any leaks. But it all went back together really nice. Like I said, I added some rubber damping here just to keep these lines from doing any metal on metal, which is not a good thing long term. But I did this one differently than I did my black car, which is where I put these fittings down here more, because I routed them the original way up top instead of back. And one of these lines, you can't really shorten it because it has fittings on both ends and it's already pre-crimped. So in order to keep it the same length, I had to move the fitting way down here. It made this bracket kind of a mess. I had to cobble something together to, because these are obviously bigger than these, so they didn't fit in this isolator block here. Anyhow, I just avoided all that. So it's nicer down here and it's nicer up here. So very happy with it. Wish I had done the black car this way, but it's done and it works fine. So on to timing belt now. All right, timing belt is on. I've pre-tensioned it with the car pokes tool. I want to do a couple of other checks just to verify how well that tool works, but I'm out of time, out of energy. So I'm going to tackle that later this week. But that's it for now. See ya.